Hello and welcome. If guided reading is a struggle for you, then you're going to want to watch because today I'm sharing 3 tips to help your guided reading and centers run smoothly. And I'll share my guided reading warm-ups resource that's going to help you feel organized, prepared, and ready to go for your reading groups. I'm Brenda Tejeda, and I taught in the classroom for 17 years, mostly in kindergarten and first grade. And now I love to help teachers by sharing ideas, tips, experiences, and creating resources to make teaching a little bit easier for you and fun. And today I'm going to talk about guided reading and setting yourself up for success with guided reading. Now, I have to be honest, guided reading was not always my forte, and I used to struggle with it greatly. So let me know if you're like me. Say hello in the comments. First of all, I want to know who's here with me, and give me a number on the scale from 1 to 10 how confident you feel with guided reading. 10 being like you're the guided reading guru and everything goes perfect when you sit down with your reading groups, no interruptions, and everything runs smoothly. And 1 being like I used to be, kind of a hot mess, and you had no idea what you're doing and you didn't even know how to start guided reading or your reading groups. Let me know in the comments, and if you're watching the replay, make sure you tell me your number 2 and let me know if you have any questions so I can come back, give you a shout out, and answer any questions that you have. All right, so let's get started with guided reading. I have 3 tips to share with you. Tip number 1 is to have a solid plan for your independent centers. So this is definitely a must. If your students are not working independently in centers, then you're not going to be able to conduct your reading groups at all because you're going to get constant interruptions and students are not going to be on task. So I know that it sounds easier said than done, especially in kindergarten and first grade, because they're babies and they need your help a lot of the time. So I do have some sub tips, if you will, and I'm going to share them with you now. First of all, have procedures. Make sure that your students know everything from how to get to their center, where to get materials, where to ask for help if they need it, and what to do when they finish their center. If you have good procedures in place, then it'll help you run guided reading smoothly because you won't get as many interruptions from your students. I do have a YouTube video where I talked a little bit more about center tips, so I'll link that after I'm done if you want to watch that. Okay, another tip is to have a reminder sign. So after you go over procedures, you're going to want to make a little anchor chart for your students to refer to and make sure everything is on there so that if they have problems, they can always go to the chart and remember what to do. Now, I like to have a center leader. Every group has one person that's in charge and knows exactly what to do at that center so that if any students need help, they can go to only the center leader. And the rule is in my class, only the center leader is allowed to come interrupt me to ask me a question if they don't know, and unless it's an emergency, of course. But that really minimizes the interruptions that I have at my guided reading center. And also be consistent. So I know that it is so tempting when students come up to you and ask you even a simple question like, I don't have a pencil, or I can't find my crayons. And you know that it might take you 2 seconds to answer their question, but you have to just be consistent and say, oh, you have to ask your center leader. Because if you do answer that, I know that it's easier to just answer and get back to your group, but if you do, they'll just keep coming back to you. So we have to get them used to going to their center leader and not coming up to you during this time. That's super important. All right, and also have anchor centers. What I mean by anchor centers is when I first started, I thought I had to have all kinds of fun centers, new centers every week, and I really drove myself crazy trying to reinvent centers every week. Let me know if you did that too, if you're trying to get fun activities for your students. And of course, we want to engage them, but you don't have to come up with new centers every week. In fact, I had 5 anchor centers in my classroom, and I taught the kids how to do those 5 centers, and from week to week, I only had to change 1 element. It could be as simple as a word list, and everything else remained the same. That's going to save you time with prep, and it saves time with you having to explain what to do at centers every week. So that's definitely a must, is to have anchor centers. All right, it's time for tip number 2. Actually, before I finish tip number 1, I did want to show you this picture because I used to do finished work all wrong. So I used to have students, you're always going to have students who don't finish their work for one reason or another. So I used to have them place their unfinished work in a bin. But then when they went to go look for it, they could not find it. And it was like a stack this big, and they just couldn't find their papers. So I started this system where I have a basket for each table, and it's color coded. Students have a folder in these baskets, and when they're not finished with anything, they go get their folder, put their work inside, put it in that bin. That way, when they have extra time and they can finish their work, they can just go grab their folder, take it to their seat, and get to work. All right, so the next tip is to set clear routines and clear expectations. So besides your centers, once you have your centers, your students working at centers independently, you want to make sure that they know exactly what to do when they come to your table. So you want to tell them any materials they have to bring. Now in my classroom, I like to have everything ready for them. I don't want them fumbling looking for crayons or pencils, so I have their student materials with me. The only thing I asked them to bring to the back table was their their book baggie. So they all had a little bag of books that we read and a notebook in there for any kind of writing that we did. They should also know what to do when they get to your table. So after each group, I took a couple of minutes to jot down some notes about that group. And in that time, my next group came to my table. They knew they had to get their sight word flashcards and practice their fluency phrases. And they would wait for me to be ready to begin our group. So I would take down some notes, and I just glance around the room, make sure everybody was on task. And then we'd be ready to start. And also make sure that they know what to do if they finish their book early. So once you get started reading with your book, as I went around the table listening to each student, they knew that if they finish the book early, they can go back and reread. And I love to challenge them. They don't always want to go back and reread, so I love to challenge them and say, I bet you can find something new each time you reread. Maybe it's something new in the pictures, maybe it's something new in the words, and you didn't think about it before. So I challenge you to reread and find something new each time. All right, so if you have clear expectations and routines, then your students will come to your table ready to go, and you'll be able to start right away. You recycle the centers, so you have those 5 centers every week, and then you can just change the skills that they do at that center. So I usually had a listening center, I had a reading center, a writing center, a word work center, and a sight word center. And of course, sometimes I would want to put in a different center or a different activity, and I could do that from time to time, but I knew that if I didn't have time to put something new in there, I could just always have those backup centers, and students knew exactly what to do. All right, let's move on to tip number 3, and that is to have materials ready. Now, I know I mentioned this a little bit before, but I can't emphasize how important this is, especially in kindergarten and first grade. If you have to fumble around looking for resources and materials, your students are going to start getting distracted, maybe with each other, maybe with something that fell on the floor. So I like to have everything ready to go, so that when they come to me, we can get started as soon as we can. And this includes their student bin. So I keep anything that they would need besides their book baggie. I keep their pencils, dry erase markers, crayons, all that good stuff. I keep my teacher bin with my markers, my Post-its that have so many uses, and my pens. And also, of course, your teaching materials. So any books that you're going to use, I keep my books in baskets for each group. Magnetic letters, of course, whisper phones, mini anchor charts. So as I introduce anchor charts throughout the year, I take a picture and then I print out a copy of them and put them in my binders so that I can use them. And of course, any notes that you're taking about your students' progress. Also, organize materials by skill. This is actually like a sub tip. If you have materials for letters, you can keep all those together. Keep your CVC or long vowel, sight words, all your materials together by their skill. And then that way, when you need something, you can grab it right away. Speaking of keeping your materials at arm's length, I'm going to share with you my resource that I created because, like I said, when I first started teaching, my guided reading was a mess. It was a disaster, and I felt like I felt like I was alone. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like everybody else knew how to do guided reading, but I didn't. And no matter how much time I spent planning, it seemed like guided reading never went smoothly. So I would even start doing a guided reading lesson, and I would have my plans detailed, and I would start my lesson, and then as we're reading, I realized I needed to teach a certain skill, but I didn't have something on hand to use as an example. So I would have to think of an idea, or if I had an idea, I'd have to like write it out, and that would take me time. And like I said, the more time that you spend having to think of something or fumble around looking for a resource, then your students get distracted. And you really only have like 20 minutes with them, so you want to make the most of your time and have everything ready to go. So I created this resource to have something at hand for every skill that can come up. And when I tell you every skill, I mean every skill that I could think of, and from researching everything that came up during guided reading. I want to show you the components. First, I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'll show you. There are four components to this bundle. There are teacher guides for each section to make sure that you know how to use it, or any tips that I have for you. There are one-page warm-ups, and I know that yesterday I spoke about phonological awareness warm-ups. If you missed that, you can catch the replay on my Facebook page. Those warm-ups only take like 1 or 2 minutes at the beginning of your reading group, and they're auditory activities. These warm-ups are going to actually be used by the students. So you would give the students a page and you do a warm-up together. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. The skill cards, and there's over 800 of them in this bundle, are just for targeted practice of each skill. If you notice that a student needs a little bit more practice with a skill, that's what the cards are for. And then we have the Teaching 10 cards, which I absolutely loved, and I actually use them whole group as well. I have a digital version of all of them, so I displayed them on my whiteboard and use them for a reading workshop to do a whole group mini lesson. All right, so like I said, everything is digital. So if you're teaching virtually again this year, or if you just want to display it on your whiteboard to do with your students, the skill cards are great for that. You can put a couple of slides in your morning meeting and you can use it that way. Let me show you what that looks like. So I have 3 binders, one for levels AA through D, then I have EFG together, and I have HID together. So let me just give you a little peek about what's inside. So as you can see, level AA is super easy. It's teaching students concepts of print. So this is a great way to start your reading group, to remind them basic concepts of print, going from left to right, pressing the dots for one-to-one correspondence when they're reading, and then also to pay attention to the pictures for comprehension. A lot of the comprehension comes from the pictures, so they have to be able to notice details in the picture. I also included a little direction at the top of each section so that you can guide their instruction with this. And if you have a sub, a teaching assistant, or a parent volunteer, you can easily hand this off for them to do as well. Now, as I tabbed this, I tabbed a few to show you. So I think I wanted to mention here that I also have little bonus activities on some sections just to get them thinking a little further. These are if you have extra time and you want to talk about a comprehension skill. Like here it says, what can they all do? So that's something that they have in common. They can fly. Do they start with the same sound? So it's a little bit more practice. And as the levels increase, they get more difficult. Here we're starting to work with letters and reading CVC words. And then I also like to print out the features page because it reminds me all the skills that are in that level. How do you use these in kindergarten? Well, you can use them in kindergarten and first grade. That's what they're designed for. And you can use the lower levels with kindergarten. Of course, kindergarten and first grade, I'm always amazed by the wide range of ability that I have. So I ended up even using warm-ups from the HIJ level with a few of my kindergartners. So I would use them the same way. The ones that you use depend on the grade level. And here is a peek at level C with word families, sight words in context. Now I love these activities because it really has the kids focus on the text and make sure that they're reading accurately. So If you're looking at this, you might think I made a mistake, but I did this intentionally to make sure that they are reading the text carefully. If you ever had students who kind of read quickly and they're not really paying attention or they're guessing at the words, then this is an activity that will help them. They have to find the sentence that makes sense and goes with the picture. So look at all these sentences, and here they have to find the correct sentence that does not have a mistake, and then find the picture that goes with it for comprehension. And then this is just my A to D bundle binder. So of course I do have higher levels. This is another similar activity for self-monitoring. So they have to find the error in each sentence. And then down here, just for a little bit of fun and also self-monitoring, they find what's silly in each picture. Okay, so that's a peek at the warm-ups. Now, I want to give you a peek at the skill cards. So here I have, again, if you don't have one of these, I highly recommend them. And I think I saw an ad today at Michael's that they're $20. I don't know how long that sale is for, but I think you can also use your teacher discount. But I have them all in these cases, and I'll just show you a couple of them. I have these skill cards for each level, AA through J, and I also have them for comprehension skills. So let me go back here and show you what that looks like. It's probably easier to show you the digital ones because I can see them on screen, but I'll show you a few here this way. So here's my level D set, and I like to put the skills that are included in each set up here, just so that when I open the box, I can see easily what I'm going to find here. And I see Lisa said you can use the teacher discount on top of sale items. That's what I thought. That's great. So if it's on sale for $20, then you can get it even cheaper than that. And then here are the skill cards for level D. And here's a peek at some of the comprehension cards. So the comprehension cards, you can use almost all of them on every level because they go from simple to more advanced. And here's one for making a prediction. Each card has a little direction here and a little, I don't know if you can see it because it's very tiny, but a little identification piece there to help you organize. And again, if your cards go rogue in the classroom, you'll know where to put them when you get them, which box they go in. All right, I think it's easier to show you the digital. So let me go back. Okay, so like I said, everything is also digital in Google Slides. And here are the warm-ups. So you can use this whole group with your students. This is the levels HIJ. So you can see that these are more advanced than the ones I was showing you before. And sometimes I like to just display one of these on my whiteboard and do them with the whole class or a group that was larger than my guided reading group, but not the whole group. All right, here are my skill cards. And let me just show you a few of these. I love these. The students love to put their finger on this and trace from the rocket ship and end up on the moon. There are a lot of these. So let me just show you a few of the other skill cards. This is from reading labels. And you can see that it gets more advanced. Oh, I know that you can't see. Let me see if I can move this a little bit. Okay. I included some moving pieces on the side of the skill cards too, just to add a little bit of fun for your students. Who doesn't like movable pieces, right? Okay. And here's a little peek at the EFG set. So we're going into digraphs here. And glued sounds. Here's some more self-correcting skill cards. The students have to read the sentences and then drag to highlight the correct sentence. All right, I did forget to show you my guided reading teacher tent card. So I'm going to show you that in a second. And these are the skill cards for the higher levels. So I have contractions. I have different sounds of Y, inflectional endings, and more self-monitoring. I think I do this on every level starting from level C because it's so important for them to make sure that they're reading the text correctly and accurately. So let me go back and show you the teaching tent cards I used to have these in a smaller bin, but I added a whole bunch more to the bundle, so I had to buy this bin, and I got it at the Dollar Tree. So if you have a Dollar Tree near you, make sure that you check it out. These fit perfectly in here. And these are standing, let me see if I get them, okay. These are foldable cards that stand right on your desk. So when you have a teaching point, let's say at the beginning of your book, or maybe even once you're into the book and you realize that all your students need a particular skill, or you want to use an example for one particular student, you can look for a card, put it up on the table, and read. The back has a little teacher script that you can use as a guide for your teaching point, and then you can just leave it up so they can reference it as they're reading the book. So I have them for print concepts, for decoding words, for comprehension, and for fluency. So here's an example. We reread smoothly, and the back will tell you exactly what you can say, and this has an example. And I love these because, like I said before, if I was in the middle of a reading group lesson and then I found that I needed to reteach a certain skill and I didn't have an example on hand, then they might get distracted if I start to try to look for an example. So these are great to have on hand and to use on your whiteboard as well. And of course, those are available digitally too. So let me look at the comments. Do you have any questions? Let me know. I'm seeing, yes, pictures tell a story is what you tell your students, Lynn. That's right. So they have to make sure that they're noting details in the pictures as well. That's very important. Sophie, amazing work. Thank you so much. Denise, these look awesome. Thank you so much. Vanessa says, I'm always spending so much time planning my guided reading groups because I'm unsure of how to progress each skill. I know, I am with you and I hear you, because I used to spend so much time and I used to think, like, what is wrong with me? I'm spending hours planning and I still don't feel like I'm doing it right. I promise these are going to help you feel organized and ready to go. Let's see. And Kayla, I love those. It's always nice to have something already made and ready. Angel, I'm so glad that I bought this. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to put my information there in case you have any questions that you didn't get to ask here. Like I said, I will come back after and answer as many as I can, but just in case, so you have my information there. I love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that I gave you some good tips that you can take into your classroom for guided reading and centers. Have a great night. Bye-bye.